Welcome back to our program. This is the second hour. We will be discussing the state of the graft in the country, given that the war has been renewed, not just by the executive, the judiciary, but the legislative arm of the government. We do have legislators in the House, of course, youth leaders as well. And in terms of getting the legal analysis, we also have our Kili in the House. That will be our second topic. But I can see some of your feedbacks through the WhatsApp. You're currently asking me, like, for example, we do have Teresia from Dagoretti North asking, ask Mheshimiwa Elachi, when are we likely to see some of these bursary funds allocated to the number of students residing in Dagoretti North? Let me allow Mheshimiwa to give us a bite on that. Mheshimiwa, let me start with you and welcome to the show and Happy New Year. Happy to see you. You've just heard this is just one of the residents residing in Dagoretti North. We also had in the Kisumu Central members of parliament also receiving not just the 184 million he was supposed to receive, but only 30 million. Just respond to that. How much have you received so far in NGCDF?
Well, I think across, me being a member of the committee also in Parliament, across we have given equity to all.
Yes.
So whatever Mheshimiwa has received is what we have received. But also, the fund managers and Mheshimiwa knows very well. So Mheshimiwa who comes and says otherwise, it's because themselves have not done what the head office have told them. So I'm hoping all of them have done their proposals and sent their proposals. Now, after you have received, many of us is when we are about to just go through the process of vetting and ensuring. And so I'll want to tell Teresia next week from Monday, yes. I think Dagoretti North now, every ward, we are now, the whole of this week is to announce how we will do it at Lavington Girls. So we will be at Lavington Girls, Teresia, your ward, you know your ward, and so look at the advert and make sure you come during the day of your ward. So that we have a process that goes seamlessly, and that day they receive the form, they fill the form, they leave it there, so that we are able also to vet very fast, and we shall ensure by early Feb most of the kids will have received their bursaries. And I've always told parents, and I will repeat here, parents, this is not the end of that school fees. For us, okay, we give 5,000 and we give 10,000, depending. And I think the ones that I have received who have performed very well, they are on their way to school, because those ones, they know that we have to give in to hold that child from everything, holistically. And so we look for friends who come in, because I'll be lying that I will use bursary to holistically look at this child. It does not, it won't even work. So I know I have students who already are joining Precious Blood, have joined Kenya High, but we've tried our best. I want to thank Strathmore. I want to thank the different Kenyari who have come in to pick the bright students and who have picked, who are able now to go to school. So all I want to tell parents, I want us to agree, education is not just about Mheshimiwa. Education is about a holistic stakeholder holding each other from the parent. And I always tell parents, because all of them are within our age mates, that when we were going to school, our parents did have Mheshimiwa to give them bursary. So you cannot peg your child on a bursary of Mheshimiwa to ensure they will have learning. In fact, the first blessings comes from the child, from the parent. When the parent buys the books and gives the child gets more joy by knowing my parent is really taking me to school. So I want to tell parents, before you start now abusing your children, how you don't know how she came to the world or he, yet when we were bringing them, it is us who are praying to God to give us these children. Bless your child with a gift to take to school. A book, a dictionary, by the effects of the child. And come now and tell others in the community, even they will see, they won't even question. I mean, if you come and you have everything, really, it will be very unfair also to me to just start. I'll say you have gotten. I would rather even write a letter to Mwalimu and keep that commitment that indeed we shall ensure this child goes to school. Yes.
Okay. Senator, finally?
I just wanted to make a quick bite, Mr. Abdi, about the Statistics Institute of Economic Affairs was given.
Yes.
You see, when they were talking about absorption of the budget, when they are analyzing the budget implementation, when they say education, they only had 62% absorption rate, it's very unfair. And then they say national security had 99% absorption rate. And you know, in terms of budget, it will mean these ones have spent their money. These ones have not spent their money. So it would mean when they're asking for more funds, national security will be given faster, because they will say we have need, that's why we finished our money, as opposed to education. And yet we have heard from the Honorable Dr. Odongo,
yes,
the member for Kisumu Central, and Mheshimiwa Elachi here, that the money has not come. So how can you spend money which has not come? And then you rate education at 62%, you say absorption rate. So I think they should be fair and give all the circumstances that in fact the delay in disbursement is the cause of low absorption rate. And then before the doctor here left, he said that they had proposed you know, that there should be a national fund for bursaries. All the bursaries should be put in one place and so on. For me, I think we should have a discussion about this whole thing. Better than that, that's an idea, but we should have a discussion, because when we were in the National Assembly many years ago, we didn't have bursaries. When we started the CDF, because we were the ones who started it, we only were doing classrooms, physical structures, and so on. This headache of MPs, like the way you have seen the MP there, my MP at home, and so on, with hundreds of students, application forms, and so on. And you know, think about it. Abdi, it is the Treasury taking that money to the MP, the same government taking to another government. And that other government officer, the national government, the CDF fund, to take now to the schools. Why can't we take it to the schools directly through the Ministry of Education? I really want to have a conversation around this issue. Why should it be taken to the MPs and then taken to, I mean, it's like, and all that is, there's money cost to it. In our time, we didn't use any, we were not doing any bursaries. We were doing physical structures. Why can't we go back to that? So that MPs focus on physical structures, development, and then that money, if we are saying free education, let it be free. Let all the public schools be free, like the way the other gentleman who left here was talking about. If we're saying it's free, let it be free. Let all the money go directly there. Not, you know, a triangle, a rectangle, and it's the same government shuffling money around. And you know who benefits? It is Safaricom, because the money sometimes has to be done through this. It is the banks, because they will take interest. It is all those people. It's not fair, I think.
Subject to interpretation, because IEA, first of all, is not here to defend itself in terms of the absorption rate. And of course, in terms of the NGCDF, there is a bill that even members of parliament, they passed it, the president assented to it. It is supposed to be the NGCDF board that is supposed to look and cater for that particular money. The work of a legislator is to oversight that fund, the way you oversight the county heads who
but the reality, I'm talking about reality.
Senator, they're not here to defend themselves.
No, the reality is
they're not here to defend themselves.
It is the MPs.
But for me, I think one of the things I would say, in terms of process, maybe that's where you will come in just to guide, because it can also become very chaotic. And we cannot, one of the challenges I find our country is facing is when we decide we just do holistic things. So you started a process. The same, even my president who is at the top was a Mheshimiwa who did this thing. We messed the process. We always refuse to take, first of all, that we are the ones who have made this process this way.
You as the legislators.
Yes. And so to change it, we cannot do it in one day, because you have set a mindset. Even me, I find it crazy. And I'm like, why can't I just be told to write and send it? And so we have to also start slowly. Now every child has NEMIS, isn't it?
Yes.
So why can't we start by ensuring I just use NEMIS? So you come I will look at your names, pop it, put in. Then the next thing, Mheshimiwa has a good idea, just to so that, because I know today now and the whole week and the other, that is all we are going to go, the madness of this. Then from there, we come and say, if I have given a child bursary, it was just 5,000. And then you put it all in one portal. So I just do the process. Let us feed it all in one portal. It will come to the national, to Ministry of Education, and they will look. I'll give the infrastructure. You see now, when you give infrastructure to the Ministry of as education, look at now my classrooms, for example, go to Lavington and just look the contrast between what they did and I have done. It looks clearly, and it is wrong. Because we are, so if you know you have a weakness in that, we do it properly. Then we give you what you can do properly, because you have NEMIS, and every child in this country, you know, you put in.
So, Mheshimiwa, we need to put a cap on the education matters. We need to focus on other issues that are crippling the nation. Of course, the education sector is very vital, and it is one of the pillars, not just for the administration, but for the parents and the communities alike in this particular country. It is a conversation that will be carried on. Of course, continue talking to us through our social media platforms at KBC Channel 1, at Abdiaziz Hashim now. Now, progressively want to move on to the second topic. Now, joining us this morning for this particular topic will be none other than Honorable Danson Mungatana, the Senator for Tana River, Honorable Beatrice Elachi, Member of Parliament for Dagoretti North. We still have Ashioya Biko, an advocate of the High Court, Wakili, still here with us, and of course Honorable Samwel Masaki, a national youth leader of the UDA party. This is the conversation that we're going to have. The war against corruption, which has kicked off not just from the executive side, but the judiciary and the legislator. Now, a little bit of statistics from last year's, where a national report that was sent to the Augusta House, where of course we do have parliamentarians in the House, in terms of the national security report that was forwarded to Parliament, that shows that corruption cases increased by 64% in last year alone. Now, in the report, President William Ruto pointed out some of the key issues that were underlined, that between the 1st of September 2022 and August 31st, 2023, corruption cases were much higher compared to the previous years, which was 28% that was recorded in the same period of 2022. Now, some of these cases until 2021 were also higher in terms of what they were registered in the National Security Report that was forwarded to the August House. And of course, that was 17%. But the other issues that we're currently focused on, let me take it a little bit back. This is what I was talking about initially. In the same period of 2021, it recorded 17% in terms of cases of corruption. This was just from the executive side. It prompted action from the president's side. That's why he allocated the duty to none other than his chief of staff and the head of public service, that is Felix Koskei, to meet with government officials, both in private and public sectors, to ensure that this vice is rid out. And that's why the president even announced there's only one pay bill, you currently know, 222, that is currently being used by the National Treasury. Initially, we used to have in all the ministries a pay bill number, but the president centralized it to the National Treasury to also nip in the bud in terms of corruption. Now, let's focus on a hot arm of the government that currently many people are talking about in terms of the judiciary. We start off with the judiciary. Now, the Judicial Service Commission received, according to its report that was read earlier this week by none other than the Honorable Chief Justice Martha Koome, is that 72 petitions, complaints against the judges were filed at JSC. Now, out of those 72 petitions, 13 were dismissed because it touched on a number of issues, the merits and demerits of a decision of a judge. And of course, this is where the Chief Justice said, if you're not agreeing with the judgment that has been made by any particular judge, you need to go to the Court of Appeal and appeal that particular ruling as it was envisaged in the 2010 Constitution. Now, out of the 72 petitions, 6 judges were asked to respond to some of the petitions that were brought before JSC. Out of the 6, 4 were told to respond or were admitted for hearing in terms of the petitions that were received by JSC. Now, 49 of them are still undergoing preliminary evaluation by the Judicial Service Commission. Now, out of the 4 petitions that were determined for hearing, 3 judges, as of 2023, left the judiciary. Now, one opted out in terms of early retirement. But out of the 3 judges that left the judiciary in the year 2023, sorry for that, let's go back. Now, one of those judges opted to leave the judiciary through early retirement. Now, 2 out of the 3 were subjected to the tribunal that we saw, i.e. the example of the former judge, that is Said Chitembwe, which we witnessed. He was ejected from the judiciary through a plenary hearing, and the evidence that was brought before the Judicial Service Commission under the tribunal that was appointed found him guilty. He went to the Supreme Court of Kenya, but the 7-judge bench of the Apex Court upheld the decision of JSC. Now, still within the judiciary, in the last 2 financial years, we have had 85 disciplinary cases against judicial officers and staff. The digits are there. Two judicial officers were dismissed from the service, 5 owing out to the services of the evidences provided through a consideration by the Commission were absolved and reinstated back to service. 2 cases against the judicial officers are still pending before JSC, and finally 5 were reinstated because the threshold for the evidence that was brought forth against them were not substantiated and of course proved in a law of court because of the burden of proof. Now, finally, as we wind up on the judiciary part, we are talking of the nature of disciplinary cases that came before the Judicial Service. It's talking about the soliciting for bribes, corruption, which the Chief Justice clearly stated that they are trying to weed out. That's why they invited independent arms such as the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, EACC, to audit some of their systems, stating that clearly they are the only arm of government that have brought EACC on board, but also the executive done the same. We're expecting to hear if the legislators who are here with us in the House to tell us if they'll invite members of EACC, given that they still appear in their committees, various committees, in terms of purpose of accountability. Now, finally, those were the nature of cases in terms of currently before the judiciary. And finally, we want to go over now to the legislative arm of the government, where we do understand there are very critical bills before the House. We start off with the Whistleblower Protection Bill. To sustain the fight against corruption. These are the related cases. Now, this particular crucial bill of 2021 will be focusing on how employees have a conducive environment to operate on. This is what we saw in the Mara heist, when an employee came forth in terms of how public funds are spent in that particular institution, and that person actually was fired, but the court hired that particular person for his bravery. And we're also talking about the government led by President William Ruto clearly stated he will try and see if this whistleblower protection bill will see the light of day, given that it will help in creating a conducive environment just for the employees, but for creation of resources for safe houses we normally see. And also the lifestyle audit bill. This is a particular bill that you have heard from every administration, from the previous and the current one, talking about the lifestyle audit bill. The president has also vowed to ensure that this bill, through the majority side of the National Assembly as well as the Senate, sees the light of day. Now, finally, conflict of interest bill. This is a particular bill that kick-started a storm late in the year 2023, where it inhibits public servants to maintain a dual role in terms of in public service and private practice and engage in government dealings. This is what even EACC has been talking about. That is the retrospective from the judiciary, the executive and the legislative arm of government in terms of fighting the vice known as corruption. Let me start here on my left. Honorable Masaki, who is the National UDA Youth Leader. We start off with you. Corruption is not a new phenomenon in this country. It has kick-started off this year. Where are we going wrong?
I think, thank you so much, First Abdi. I think we have to change the ways of how we are going to tackle corruption. And when we were on campaigns, we made pledges, and the president was very clear that we are going to deal with corruption. Regardless of the position, regardless of who you are in the government, you have to stick to the code of conduct that you actually signed. So it is important that going forward, we have to change the dynamic. And this, it is not only on one side of the government.
Yes.
It talks of all the three arms of government. We are talking about legislature, judiciary, and executive. And you look at what was going on before. you realize there were things that were going on in judiciary. You realize there were cases that were there, okay? Against Judicial Service Commission, against judicial service officers, and people claiming that they were stalling government project, and people going back to court, using the court actually to stall government project. And this is what the government, and this is what the president has said, and made it very clear that for us to move forward, we have to deal with corruption decisively. Corruption costs this country more than 250,000 jobs every year. If this is not going to be sorted out, then we are still going back to the same cycle of just lip service. And that's why the president has made it very clear, and has made it clear to the judiciary, to the executive, and also to legislators that let's come up with ways on how we are going to tackle corruption. So that we can be able to move on as a country. Yes.
Let me go to Wakili. Given that there is, before we head over to the doctrine of separation of power, we're talking of corruption. This multi-agency approach that the president has forwarded in terms of the legislature, the judiciary, and the executive, combating this vice that has, in his words, delayed developments in this country. That's why before we were compared to the Asian tigers, the South Korea back in 1960s, before we gained our independence. Is it that we delayed implementing those, what our forefathers' policies they envisioned for us, or the framework that was laid by sessional paper number 10, and that's why we're in this particular mess as we speak?
Thank you so much. My take on this whole issue about corruption is that we have never as a country been intentional about weeding out corruption. We talk about corruption when we talk about corruption when it doesn't favor us. When it doesn't favor us, that is when we come out and make a lot of noise about it. Okay. We've never been intentional about weeding out corruption. There's a lot of hypocrisy in the fight against corruption. And when corrupt practices favor you, that is when you come out and make a lot of noise about it. Because we have corruption in the judiciary, that is true. We have corruption in the legislative arm of of government, that is true. We have corruption even at State House. You remember during the former President Uhuru's time, when he stated that we have upwards of 2 billion being lost, by taxpayers in corrupt deals, and
but was yet to be proved.
Oh, okay, yes, but then it is something that it is something that came out from it's something that came out from his mouth. So the hypocrisy around this discussion about corruption is what is what is annoying. So. We need to be more intentional about fighting this vice that is the corruption. You've highlighted a number of bills that are being legislated, and my take is it is not just about the bills. It is not just about the laws that we are going to come up with. Yeah. It's about a culture, because we've had a culture of corruption for quite some time. It is not something that is going away today. It's not something that is going away tomorrow. But then it is a discussion that we surely need to have. Yes.
Let me go to Mheshimiwa Elachi. We're talking about goodwill. We have seen a number of bills that are before the National Assembly. We're talking about the whistleblower protection bill. We're also talking about the bill of lifestyle audit bill, the conflict of interest bill, which is currently even before the House. Is there even good political will? We have seen it from the side of the executive, we saw it from the judiciary, we saw it from the legislative arm. Now you as leaders, is there good political will to fight this vice?
Well, let me not say good political will to fight the vice, but good political will that the bills will pass.
Okay.
Because I don't think the problems are the bills. I think the problem is a culture we inculcated in ourselves and our values, and we just decided from the word go, whether you have the bill or no bill, a Kenyan would rather sell the birth of his country, the right of birth, and just make money. That is Kenya. That is us, starting from me here. And until you look at that face in the mirror and you tell yourself, I want to change the small space I have been given to be a better space, then we will be talking, we will do the bills, we will do the acts, we will do everything, but we will remain with the same culture that is in with us. until we ask ourselves, why is it when a Kenyan is in the US, can do everything to build the US and will never think of corruption? In fact, he's the one or she who is standing in that institution and it is thriving to another. Home down here, ask ourselves how we build Rwanda, and today we are going to benchmark in Rwanda. But it is every Kenyan in this country that walked when that country was down and brought it to where it is. It means for us here, we can change, we can build Kenya if we change the culture of greediness, selfness, where we just don't care about your neighbor but yourself, and where we care, if I have $1 billion, I need 10 billion, I don't care how it comes, it has to come. That when you walk into an office, before you sell, you even sell the idea, it can be a good idea, the first thing they ask when the idea is good is, what is in it for me? And so, a person just the other day, Uganda is closing AGOA, came here, looked, could not get how to enter, has taken everything to Ethiopia, where also there are crises, and left the country he would have done. Why? Because he could not find, because everyone wants what is in it for me. And I'm telling you, if there's something we pray in the mosque, in our churches, is to pray for Kenyan, this mindset that has demonized our country, that is putting our country into a place where even our own children, I think, wonder, because even when I am driving, they wonder, did you just do that, Mom? Yeah, because they are wondering, but they see. And so even if you bring young people, vibrant, in an institution, the time they find the ones who have been there, who sit in a desk and tell you, I have been here for 30 years. Trust me, in 6 months, the mindset is gone. And they had goodwill, they had everything. So what should we ask ourselves as a country? Is that before we even think of these laws, deliberately, it must be deliberate. And we must, at one point, see those who had cases, you don't need to take them to jail. They have already the money. I have said, and I want to repeat, I will leave you with your matrimonial house so that you don't sleep outside. I will leave you with your children to go to school. But I will deny you one thing for the next 15 years. Whether you change your name, your director, you go use people, or what? Today is so easy to trace anyone. If our children are using chat, GPT, even us ourselves, what else in the world can you not tell me you can't change? It means we can. And say, for this one, you are not touching any government institution, just the way we impeach governors. And that's it. In fact, we have to, when you are impeached, is the same way this person who has been a director should stay at home and watch how the institution grows. You will come back one day when your mind is set. But I know we can't do that because we are just very selfish to ourselves. That is what is ailing Kenya.
Okay. Senator, do you agree? Is it the culture, the mindset, and what can be done to address it?
Okay, first of all, I agree with what my colleagues have said, but I don't want to repeat because they have put it very well. What I want to bring to the fore is that Cabinet sat the other day, and in their memo that was released, I picked out two very important and relevant things to the war against corruption. Number one, that creation of a single pay bill is a very major thing. What Kenyans don't know is that those organizations within government, parastatals, some departments, whatever, they were collecting levies of some form or the other. Those levies were disappearing. I'm telling you, And when Uhuru was saying that there's a leakage of 2 billion a day, people laughed. But I think he knew, because sometimes when these presidents are speaking, people think it's a joke. They have information we don't have.
Yes.
I think he knew. And what the cabinet has done, and the president leading that front, they have said, let us make payment on one pay bill. Because what would happen is that, and it is practical, because when they started pushing for implementation, a lot of these government departments in the executive were saying, no, we have technical problems, we have what, we can't do it, what. The reason was, the AIE holders know that once that money goes, and you are seated there and you are told, you know, for every million that goes, we can divert. We are the ones who bought this system. We can divert something to you. The CEO will shut up, not intervene. They will not talk, and it will be a silent conspiracy. So when they were being pushed and being told, now you are going to be fired if you are not going to comply, suddenly departments that were doing 5 million per week, they started doing 50 million in that one pay bill. So that's a major thing that is going to change. In fact, the revenues that are going to be collected are going to increase.
Okay.
Not because they were not there, but because there was corruption. And you know, yesterday we were talking somewhere else, and we were saying, and this was a statement from Honorable Kajwang, my colleague in the Senate. He said, although there is corruption in parliament, in judiciary, but the executive is where we focus on, because that's where all the money goes, for most of the money for execution of the projects and the plans, and the budget is executed by them. So we have to focus there. So if that can be made to operate, it would be a big win for President Ruto, and you will see the kind of revenues that all these departments that were leaking would bring. Secondly, e-procurement. You know, procurement is where the stealing happens everywhere, not just in government, but even in the private sector. That mentality my colleagues here were talking about, of people, you know, it's 10%. What's in it for me? What am I getting out of this? Why should I bother? You know. E-procurement, it says those goods, they'll be displayed. The computer doesn't know you. It doesn't know your face. It doesn't know kickback, basically. So the e-procurement in selecting services, in you know, bringing in shortlisting, in awarding, if we can remove the human interference, if we can make it as little as possible so that it is just e-procurement of goods and services, that is going to be a major plus for William Ruto in this war against corruption.
Okay, coming back to Honorable Masaki, in terms of the procurement, not just what the Senator is saying, even independent institutions such as the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission clearly stated that is where the problem lies. And to solve it, we need to have internal audit mechanisms. So is it the will of the government to force those institutions to have internal audit mechanisms, or the institutions themselves, given that Mheshimiwa Elachi is talking about to change the culture and mindset? It requires only one person to decide in terms of the internal audit mechanisms. Will that even at least act as a silver bullet to this vice?
I think first I need to agree with what Mheshimiwa is saying. We need to change the culture. I think we have a problem with the culture. And this is actually driving away even the investors, because an investor comes to the country, he wants to do a project, or he wants to invest in maybe industrialization, and they're being forced to give small kickbacks for them to be able to do this kind of projects. And these projects are going to give employment opportunities to young people. It's going to support our GDP. So it is something that we need to stop ourselves first. They don't need to be forced. You look at what happened when they changed the pay bill and say that all the government institutions have to adopt it. We had a change even in what we are receiving as a country in terms of the revenues. Go to KWS. When you're going to the park, they had a different way of payment. When everything was changed, they actually had more than double of the revenue that they were receiving. So that means there was a gap where this money was actually being siphoned.
Yes.
So it is important for us to accept and change our cultures. We don't need to be forced. And this actually has been going on for several years when we have change of the leadership of this institution, but still we have some few people, I will call them crooks, within these systems, within these departments of government that try and convince. If we get a new CEO today and we have crooks within that system of that department, they try to convince the CEO that, you know, this is how things have been done here. Let's adopt it. And that's where the problem is. So we need to change that culture, and also change the laws. Look at the countries that have successfully rooted out corruption. What have they done that is different from us? It's about the laws. That if today you are found culpable of corruption, then maybe you lose all your properties, you lose your dignity, you lose everything that matters to you. And some of them even they're even jailed for long life. Some are killed. Look at those countries that have successfully rooted out corruption. So it is important for us as a country to deal with corruption decisively. We have to change our mechanism. That means we change the law, we adopt new cultures, even to our own children, because this thing is even going back even to our own children, that for you to take a kid to school, you have to give them a sweet. And it's a form of corruption. Okay, it's growing. Because the moment the child is going to the university and he'll tell you, I can't go to the university because I don't have a car. You see, it's something that needs to be changed. So I agree with what Mheshimiwa is saying, that there's a problem that needs to be actually dealt with, and we have to, it's a come a time that this has to be done by ourselves. If this is not done by ourselves, then when we reached a point when we are at aged and Mheshimiwa have left at the stage, it will be too difficult for us to deal with this issue. So it is important we adopt this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let me head over to Wakili. I'm coming to you.
Can I say something about the internal auditors?
In just a few. Let's allow the Wakili, because yes, raised a pertinent issue. Do we have problems with our laws, or is it enforcement?
And that is exactly what that was to be my entry point. And if you ask me, the answer to that question is not actually the insufficiency of the laws that we have. And it even speaks to the issue of the internal audit that you talked about, and even the external audit that is undertaken by the Auditor General. We've had various reports that have been, prepared by the office, by the office of the Auditor General, concerning various instances of, corruption and so on and so forth. And even we even had the Control of Budget coming out and calling certain, state departments and even county governments that have misappropriated funds. But then the question that begs is, have these reports been implemented, or have these reports just been, pulled under the carpet and then no one cares about them? So whether we have a very effective internal audit mechanism or system, or whether it is the audit that is being undertaken by the Office of the Auditor General, the question is the goodwill that my colleagues have talked about. Do we have the goodwill to implement that, to implement those reports or the decisions that come from the from the auditors, whether internally or externally? You would find reports where an officer has been implicated, but because this officer is known to Mr. So and so in government or in the executive or at the legislature, that report is never that report is never implemented. This officer is never followed up. But then we will have a situation whereby this officer is not well connected, or they do not have the Mr. So and so, these godfathers, and you would see the office of the EACC. They will come for them, and in a record 1 week, in a record 1 month, the case has already been investigated, and the officer has been forwarded for prosecution. So like my colleagues have said, it is an issue of the goodwill. It is an issue of whether do we really mean to fight this vice that is this vice that is corruption. And it starts from the very top. If there is no goodwill from the very top, then we can't fight the vice that is the vice that is corruption. Of course, it is now the common language about the big fish and the small fish. So you would find that someone who's been implicated in stealing 200,000 shillings or 2,000 shillings or 200 bob. You know, their investigation is followed up very, very closely, and and then they're taken to court, and they're charged, and judgment comes out, and they're found guilty. But then we have even the case of Arere and Kimwaror. You saw how you saw the way it was bungled, and even Katiba Institute have gone to court to now prosecute the prosecutors who are in charge of that case, because even the judge noted the frustration that that they faced in adjudicating over that matter. So the long and short of everything is the goodwill that is there in ourselves as a country to fight this vice that is corruption.
Okay. Mheshimiwa, I'm coming to you. Let me allow the Senator to respond on the internal audit mechanisms, and also given that you watch on the counties itself. This has been what the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission clearly have a bone to pick with, especially with counties, in terms of the implementation of the budget, and on the other side in terms of allocations itself, given that we hear on a number of occasions they ask for more money. As a senator, have especially Tana River County and other counties in general put enough internal audit mechanisms to ensure that we weed out this vice from the devolved units?
Well, actually, I wanted to bring my previous experience, and I'll come to your question, but a quick one on my previous experience as a chair of a very big corporation. I discovered internal auditors are an endangered species, persons who are not liked by anybody. I discovered like the CEOs actually dislike them heavily because the internal auditors, they become intimidated by CEOs, especially if the CEO is powerful. And so we tried to create a system where we could get those reports to the board, not through the CEO, because the CEO, internal auditor basically is reporting the malpractices of the organization. So when you take it to the CEO, and Amwangalia, it's like you are a bad one, you are telling on us. So they are very an endangered species. And in fact, in that organization, we had also integrity officers. Now, this person was so afraid that he would not even want to meet me, and I'm chairman. He doesn't want to be seen coming to see the chairman. So he would ask for a private meeting because he had critical information to give us, to give the chair of the board. And it was so difficult for these people to work. So, and I've not had an organization fight for internal auditors or integrity officers, as in some organizations are also named. I think that is an angle, because they are not able to, individually, when they are isolated by the CEOs, they are not able to be very effective. The only strong office of internal audit is the government one, because the government one goes into all these, including the counties. They go into them and they ask the difficult questions. How the money has been used, how can you show us this this document? Okay, you traveled, where's the document? Or you did the supply, you paid, where what is the supporting document for these transactions? How do you support your travel? You said you stayed for 14 days. How come we have only documents for 3 days? So you should be surcharged. So the only office that really is trying is the internal auditor, is the auditor general. They have been trying to do a good job, and I think for me, I think we need to really strengthen if our government and this administration is serious about fighting corruption, we need to strengthen, because they always have a problem of shortage of staff. Imagine the audit office that is in charge of Tana River, Garissa, Lamu. It is very few people are there. So if they are doing this county, they are doing another county, they are doing another county, there's shortage of staff. So I think in terms of dealing with the nitty-gritties, we need to actually do something about empowering them by increasing their numbers
Okay.
in employment.
We do have a sound clip of the president himself ensuring that he will combat this issue. We also have a sound clip of Chief Justice Martha Koome. As my senior producer, that is Zipporah, is preparing that particular bit. Let me head over to Mheshimiwa. Mheshimiwa, talking about empowering these independent institutions that are combating this vice. In terms of strengthening those independent institutions, what more can be done? As a legislator yourself, what more can be done to ensure that these independent institutions are empowered to the extent they tackle this issue fully?
You see, if one of the things we need to ask ourselves, let me start by now what you give us. Let's say, for example, the judiciary has 85 cases, only 2 are done, and it's within now the judiciary,
yes,
where everything is theirs to do better, to have a better example to the others. But you see, it's only 2 cases they've been able to do. How many people have gotten their problems and are chucked out to only,
yes,
versus 71 staffs? What do we do in our country when we know there's a crisis in an institution? The first person we chuck out will be the CEO, will be others. You have left every person who has hold the pen to start that paper to where it reached. And that person in between, what Mheshimiwa is saying. So before you come to your internal auditor, where he will be harassed by every senior team of management when they are bringing in their documents, they don't want to bring them, because they are the ones to present the documents for the internal auditor, not to take them anywhere. And I don't know why we fear our internal auditors. They help us to ensure by the time the external auditor is coming in, you have cleaned most of the things. Correct. And if now there's a query that is so tough, then that one they will have to just tell you, and this one has to go, and you'll see how to manage it. But the rest, they will clean the document for you. So I don't think they need to be feared. We need to just empower institutions to appreciate. Especially in internal auditing, we'll always find ourselves in the challenges which now comes to EACC, small mismanagement challenges, and where we just, and those ones are issues. The other thing we have to have is all of us to have goodwill, that we are not vilifying and killing the institution, but even EACC, when you're coming in, first of all, and that's what the law tells you, you must relook at all the issues first. And so if there are issues, because you must empower these institutions. By the way, EACC is supposed to empower. You come in first to empower. If there are weak structures in terms of how their financial structures is, your work is first to empower. And one thing we have never gone to court is to ask whether one of these institutions empowered and then they were unable to follow through. But at the same time, we have to empower that EACC so that it is able to empower these other institutions. So it's not that in Kenya we love taking you to court, There are many steps, and EACC can also recommend. Yeah, not recommend wrongly, but recommend rightfully, because I'll tell you, and this is my counsel at that time, you read a letter from EACC and you're wondering, okay, so what are we supposed to do? Because they've even taken it into the worst. And you're like, surely, can we work like this? So I'll tell them, don't come. First thing Kenyans, all of us must learn. Don't enter into an institution and have this idea of protecting. Work, let your institution thrive by you doing rightfully to every organ that you were given. You will find yourselves doing the good, and everyone will start wondering and start fearing, let me change. Because if this is how it is, let me just change to work, because you are advising. But then the other thing we must be asking ourselves is that after we have talked about EACC, then we have come to the courts, then we've come now to our Auditor General. The challenge we face between this is time and how we audit. Because now we are in which year? You'll find what we are auditing, and I don't know how it will come to your Senate, and I know it is there. So you have again people who implemented, they're in the Senate and you're supposed to audit them.
They were
Conflict
governors.
of serious interest
They
is
used
there.
to be governors.
And you wonder, how are we going? So we have to rethink in all that, because everyone will fear there's nothing you'll do. I am there. I am controlling the audit, even me myself, without you even knowing. So it is very serious conflict of interest.
Okay, Mheshimiwa.
Yeah.
Now, given even the EACC itself, given that it's not here to defend itself, it has issued circulars, it has issued recommendations, with the latest one issuing to the counties to implement internal audit mechanisms so as to protect the funds itself, even for the national government itself, to the legislative arm.
And by the way, I want to really appreciate the chair now.
Yes.
By the way, he has a different way of how he have realized our challenges, and I will tell you, he is really trying to rebuild.
We're running out of time. Let's get to hear from the Chief Justice, who is the head of the Judicial Service Commission, at the footsteps of the Supreme Court of Kenya earlier this week.
A judge from office, the provisions are specified in the Constitution. He might have received reports because we have the various machineries and agencies that are charged with the responsibility of correcting information. And we would like to engage him so that he can give us that information. We are ready to receive it, even if it comes earlier than Thursday, because that's what we do. Our offices are open to receive. Even after hours, you can file online to allow the judges and judicial officers to engage with the matters objectively and deal with those matters according to the evidence and according to the law. And if somebody is dissatisfied, to follow the appeal mechanism.
We have heard from the President of the Supreme Court. We'll also get from His Excellency President William Ruto, who spoke yesterday in Nani in just a few. But let me get the reaction as well as from Honorable Masaki. We start off with you in terms of his... But before we touch on that, let's get to hear from the President yesterday in Nandi.
Mimi nimekubali yale Madam Chief Justice alisema kwamba tukutane. Mimi nimekubali kama rais ya kwamba niko tayari kukutana na viongozi wa mahakama, kukutana na viongozi wa legislature na sisi kama executive, ili tuondoe mambo ya ufisadi na mambo yale mengine ambayo yanakwamisha maendeleo ya taifa letu la Kenya.
Now you have heard from the extension of the judiciary and the executive. Given that, ladies and gentlemen, we only have 2 minutes. Let me allow you each one each at least. I will steal a few minutes from my colleague, that is Nancy Okware, who's already in the studio for the Tamrini session. Let me start with the Honorable Masaki. Dialogue, is it the way?
I think it's the way in terms of this bringing up together, because there's been a rift between the executive and the judiciary. But one thing that is clear, the president is very firm and has made it very clear that he's going to root out corruption. Regardless of the institution, is going to deal with corruption. And I'll give an example, just in a quick one. If you go to Saudi Arabia, the king of Saudi Arabia jailed the nephew and one of the princes. That was the first step, that there were mechanisms that were involved, that if you have to deal with this issue, then you leave no stone unturned. Because the problem that we have is, like, there are other people who are being left out, then it becomes a trend that people are being left out, then it continue to crops into other institutions. So the first thing that the president has given the goodwill in dealing with corruption. This is a first step, and we appreciate that, and we are going to support the president in making sure that we deal with this issue once and for all.
Thank you. Wakili, 1 minute, please.
We need not lock out persons who have given an invitation for dialogue, irrespective of whatever subject it is that they are going to discuss. That would be my take. But then, if it is on the issue of corruption, and especially within the judiciary, my take is Article 171(1) of the Constitution of Kenya that provides for the Judicial Service Commission. In that particular article, the president has 3 persons sitting. In fact, they may even be 4 if we are to add, the Attorney General and the 2 appointees of the president, and then we have the representative of the Public Service Commission. Those are 4 people. that are representing the the interest of the president at the Judicial at the Judicial Service Commission. If it is an issue that if it is an issue of corruption within the judiciary, whose employee is the Judicial Service Commission, these are the people who are supposed to be carrying the president's aspirations. So I do not really know what kind of discussions the president is going to have with specifically the Chief Justice or whoever it is that will be the representation.
Not just the Chief Justice, he clearly stated even the legislative arm.
Yes.
But the president extended it to the Judicial Service Commission.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean the Chief Justice alone, but the whole commission itself.
Exactly my point, and that is why I'm saying I don't know the width and the breadth of their discussion insofar as the issue of rooting out corruption is concerned. But then an invitation to the table for discussion of a particular issue should not be frowned upon.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I think first of all, a month of January is a very interesting month in every year. And it sets, and if you are not able, if you don't focus and ask yourself, some of us, we normally say, ask God to guide you through, and He'll give you your trajectory, how it will be. That was a very unhealthy war that was starting in our country. Very unhealthy. And it was going to take us to not a good place. And so I'm happy. Let them meet. As he says, we meet, but and even the president, I can hear his words, talk about corruption, it will be good. But as I said, and as I want to close, is that Kenya, the year 2024, remember, all our neighbors are on us like this. We go back what we read those days of realism and remind ourselves it is time to rebuild ourselves, but also to protect and to be clean to our country, because we don't have where to run to. We have blocked the neighbors.
Okay, thank you. Mheshimiwa, quickly, one
Those who argue that JSC is the only place we should take our complaints to about judges, I think they are also failing to see that in Parliament we have Parliamentary Service Commission. But it does not stop us from discussing misconduct within Parliament. We have the Public Service Commission. We don't stop because we discuss PSS, we discuss cabinet people. Why not discuss the judiciary? Judiciary is the only body that is in the three, amongst the three, that is unelected, and it is so powerful. You get? And it is not brought into question after every 5 years like we do. So when the president stands out and say, let us have a conversation about what are you people doing? You get your power from the people. I'm implementing programs of the people, and you stop them. And yet conservatory orders require you to put public interest at the helm. So let us have a conversation. Some people started saying, no, let us demonstrate, let us do what, politicizing the whole thing. I really like the way Chief Justice has approached this thing, that she said firmly, we will not accept, within us, bad apples. But if there are issues, let us discuss and let us finish them. I think that's the way to go. And that's the way the country will be built. And after this conversation, the judiciary will be a better place to work.
Thank you so much. And of course, in terms of accountability, you even heard the Chief Justice talking about the soldier report. They normally release it every year. That disciplinary actions, that even some of the cases that I was talking of, it came from the soldier report that they annually bring forth, so that for the purposes of accountability. Thank you so much. That is the Senator Honorable Danson Mungatana from Tana River. Mheshimiwa Beatrice Elachi, thank you for joining us. Member of Parliament for Dagoretti. Wakili Ashioya Biko, an advocate of the High Court, thank you. And of course, finally, that is Honorable Samwel Masaki, a national youth leader of the UDA party. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for making time for us this afternoon. We've taken a little bit of time from my colleague, and that marks the end of our program on News Check. Do join us next week, same time, same place, in terms of course, bringing you unwavered and unfiltered conversation in what is ailing, and of course the possible solutions to the current affairs or the current status of our country. My name is Abdiaziz Hashim, and my co-anchor has been Anne Wangeshi. Good afternoon.